Hello, welcome to the No Way Jose podcast. I'm your host, Jose Galison. We're back again with Matt Wolfson with another Weekly Wolfson. So, you may be out there realizing MAGA is bullshit. It is completely fallen apart. So, what do we do now? You could go third party, but I don't know. I've picked enough fun at them in the years I've podcasted over here, but I don't know. What are you just going to throw away your vote? I mean, that's a fair argument to be had. Are you going to get involved in third party politics, or I don't know, maybe perhaps look at the left? Well, it looks like a new left is forming currently. Well, is it a new left at all? That's the question we'll be talking about today. Are we perhaps seeing some of the same tricks from the past? But with that, if you guys like what you're seeing over here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. That way you can see when we're dropping new videos and we're going live. And if you want to keep up to track with the latest writings of Matt Wolfson, you can go over to oppo-research.com. We'll see you in the show.
No way, Jose.
The following footage proves beyond any doubt that the tanks intentionally set the house on fire. It proves that the Branch Davidians were murdered. You can see that this tank has a gas jet on the front that shoots fire. You can also see the fire quite plainly. The tank goes into the house twice, and each time as it backs out, the fire at the gas jets is plainly visible.
We must all do more to recognize and look for the early warning signals that deeply troubled young people send.
Hello, Matt. Pleasure to have you joining us again over here on the No Way Jose podcast on our weekly show, the Weekly Wolfson, on our regular time on Wednesdays to keep the theme of alliteration. Today we'll be talking about Empire with a Humanitarian Face, Democrats Rebrand. This is your latest piece over the Libertarian Institute, over at libertarianinstitute.org. I found this pretty prescient, touched on a lot of things a lot of people have been thinking on as of late, and I think something that's been kind of under-talked about so far as in like a theory sort of sense, or praxis, I guess you could say as well. And what are we going to do? It's just kind of a lot of people are just kind of doing it, but it hasn't really been much been philosophized about it seems, as of late. So I think it's appropriate that we're doing so now. But it's a pleasure to have you with us today. I don't know if you have any want to give us any of your introductory thoughts before we get into this piece. The floor is yours.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Go ahead, wherever you want to start.
Well, geez, I just kind of told you wherever you would start. Okay, well, I guess to kind of start with kind of how I introed this, I guess maybe a good way to kind of dig into it, I guess just kind of what are your thoughts about this current dynamic going on? I guess kind of what I'm alluding to a little bit. You're seeing this a lot with like the Groypers, particularly right now, I've seen. And a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with MAGA. And a lot of people are explicitly advocating, and these are people who would be considered ardent, like dissident right sort of figures, that it's becoming this trend where a lot of them are legitimately endorsing, essentially pushing for Democratic candidates, or maybe even some policies and stuff, but essentially kind of pushing towards the Democrat side of the aisle. I think the idea being is that, like, hey, we've been completely stumped over here on the right side of things. It's gone completely tits up. So we're looking over the left, which, I mean, I kind of called this out before it was even going to happen. It's been predictable. I've been saying this for a hot minute now. This is going to be the move. but I don't necessarily think the move is necessarily better. I mean, to some degree, I can understand how, like, perhaps there is more political wiggle room to get things done, possibly. But I guess I would look at it as more foolhardy, and that, like, yeah, you might get a little bit, but you're just kind of falling into the same trap and kind of snugging that noose even tighter down your throat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I would lead off from my perspective to sort of frame this is to say, I want the Democrats to take the House and the Senate in 2026 this fall, certainly the House. I hope that Graham Platner beats Susan Collins in Maine. I think that the Democrats' view of foreign policy is a necessary check on Trump, wanting to invade every country in the world and violate their sovereignty. That being said, I started doing this work 3.5 years ago. And until early 2025, I was writing against Democrats because the Democrats were the custodians of American military corporate empire. And, in the last, I was counting today, before I went on, since Trump's inauguration in January 25, I've written about 70 pieces, give or take, and about a dozen of them, give or take, have been about the Democrats. So mainly I've been focused on what the guy in power is doing, how he sold out the promises he made to, to limit the deep state. I mean, the promises he made to anti-war, anti-empire voters, anti-military corporate voters, and in other words, many of, if not most of the promises he ran on. But when I've gone over to the Democrats are doing what, given my background reporting on them, I would expect them to do, which is basically go back to the playbook that they've been running for the last, 35 years. And it's a playbook that has allowed them to be one half of the uniparty, one half of a bad choice with kind of different veneer. I mean, we call, the Republicans culturally conservative. We call the Democrats culturally progressive, but they're similarly loyal to American empire, to bases abroad, to financial services, to a deep ties between corporations and government, to a lack of genuine representation on the ground, against small businesses, against labor unions, against ordinary communities, whether black or white, just trying to sort of make their way in the world, have some control over their lives. And they're very much doubling down on to sort of push their way back what they've always done or what they've done for the last 35 years. And what this piece sort of served as is me giving a comprehensive, more holistic, I mean, you were nice enough to use the word philosophical, backed by facts point of view of, okay, we're a year and a couple months in. There seems to have been a lot of changes on the Democratic side. The rise of Zohran Mamdani, a new fight within the Democrats for, are we going to go center? Are we going to go left? But the point of the piece is we're really seeing politics as usual. I think that's a summary. I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere you want.
Well, one of the themes with this piece seemed to be as there's a rebrand, there's a shifting of the parties in some regards, although in another sense, not really actually at all. But I guess to kind of focus in on where it sort of is, I guess we could use, for example, and I think you can also look at this as you brought up Graham Platner just recently. I mean, he's been involved in a number of controversies since he's come in. And a lot of them, while I have my suspicions and my concerns and nothing crazy substantive or anything, but obviously I'm a little bit skeptical of anybody. But at the same time, every bit of his controversies that swirl around him, it's for somebody like me, has made him only all the more relatable and kind of like an everyman sort of character. For example, the latest, I believe, was Fox News that had found some old Reddit stuff where he was talking about how, like, when he was deployed, how he would be cranking it in porta potties, and how there was, like, I don't know if it was that he drew wiener art or if there was wiener art all over the porta potties, but, like, these are just, for one, like like anyone who's been in the military, like I believe it was Ryan Grimm who was quoted. I think he was being cheeky, and I think it was Graham Platner that he was quoting. But he said, I can't remember how he referred to him as, but he essentially said anyone who's like upset about this is being ridiculous. A lot of the people who are throwing shade at him for this are the same people who are military members who he even said, like, jokingly and semi-seriously, have almost certainly cranked it in porta potties during in their time as well. Because, it's just kind of a fact of life, not to get too crass, but it's just kind of, these are the sort of people coming out. You have Gavin Newsom, who's also, using a little bit more forceful or right-wing coded language, kind of, I don't know if he said words like retard, like, oh, you're being retarded, but it's kind of in that same vein. He's not like dropping hard R's or anything crazy like that, but he's using a slightly hipper, more edgy language. That's gay. This is, that sort of stuff. So we are seeing a little bit of the dying of the woke. I think with that too, there's a lot of, on the left, it's just kind of it's kind of just a part of the left at this point that, having love for Israel is just it's a harder and harder political take to have over on the left side of the aisle. But even still, on the left side, on the new left that seems to be, sort of forming, that does seem to be, at least they give lip service, it seems, to, things like Israel or foreign policy, which, depending on where they're at, that may not matter. If you're talking about like Mamdani, does it really matter too much what his foreign policy is? But either way, just kind of, what are your thoughts on anything in that vein? Just kind of the new left that's coming up. I guess there's a little bit of a dual commentary to be had there. There's the authentic rising, or what maybe is authentic. If you're schizophrenic enough, you may think they're controlled op. There's always that to be concerned about with the Graham Platners, the Mamdanis. I'm trying to think of some other people that fit this sort of bill. But then you have, obviously, on the flip side, you have the Gavin Newsoms. Some people are still trying to maintain some sort of political viability and are leaning a little bit into that vein of thinking. But I guess we'll probably get into a little bit how maybe that may just be a little bit of a veneer. But any of your thoughts on this up and coming movement, I guess you could say, new left in quotes?
Yeah, I think probably. Thanks for teeing that up. I think maybe the most effective way to do this is to zoom out, just to put it in perspective of where that left fits in the party. The way I divide the two parties is each party, the Republican and the Democrat, are divided into three sectors. And the Republicans, you have the neoconservatives, so the Bush Republicans, the people who like that Trump is in Iran, the people that like that Trump did Venezuela, the people that don't see a problem with endless war. Then you sort of have the center group, what I'll call the Charlie Kirk Christians, the people who mostly care about cultural issues or are willing to mostly care about cultural issues. And then you have the people like you, me, Tucker Carlson, Tom Massey, MTG, who really care about power and where power is located. And we don't like corporations and the government getting too close. When we see the sort of woke bullshit on the other side, we think that's a product of corporate government malfeasance. We like it if someone's Christian, but if you're Christian like Ted Cruz and sending people to die abroad, we don't care that you're anti-woke. We want the system cleaned up. Democrats have a similar divide. There's the neoliberals. It's an academic term, but it's bandied around a lot. And they're the people who like interventions abroad. They were for Iraq. They did Kosovo and Bosnia. They were with Obama when he did Libya. They're for Ukraine. They don't talk the same way as the neoconservatives. They respect the United Nations, but in the end, they want America having a big footprint abroad. Then there's the sort of progressives in the center who, like the Christians, the Charlie Kirk Christians, they're basically for identity politics that they prefer. Rather than have the wife be submissive, they want the wife to be dominant. Rather than having, traditional marriage, they want LGBTQ+. And then there's the third group, the left. And the left actually, much like the Tucker Carlson right, cares about corporations being too big, cares about endless war, cares about income inequality. And what we've seen in the last year is that Trump has essentially purged everybody in elected office from the GOP who's on the Tucker Carlson right, who thinks what you and I think. But in the media sphere, in the culture, those voices have only gained influence. I mean, Ben Shapiro is politically more powerful than he's been in 10 years, but he's getting fewer and fewer views. Whereas Tucker Carlson is politically less powerful, but he's more and more popular. And Trump did this with the aid of the Charlie Kirk Christians, the identity people, and the neoconservatives. He got their votes. They tend to be older, people like the people who voted for Ed Galrein against Tom Massey, and they've purged MTG, Tom Massey, some others. You see a similar thing with a variation among the Democrats. Among the Democrats, electorally, Zohran Mamdani is actually doing pretty well, and he cares about big corporations. He cares about foreign wars. So does Platner. They're pro-peace candidates. They're pro-labor unions. They're anti-military industrial complex. They've gotten more powerful. And so they're pushing back against the neoliberals, the people who want, the war in Ukraine, that kind of stuff. They're actually getting political power. So the anti-establishment voices on the left are politically doing far better than the anti-establishment voices on the right. It looks like Platner will be the next senator, possibly from Maine, and Mamdani is the mayor of the country's most important city. Meantime, MTG is out of office, and Tulsi Gabbard's gone to the extent she was there. Tom Massey was defeated. The problem is, to get where the left wants to go, which is in power, they've had to make compromises with the progressives and the military corporatists on the Democratic side. I mean, to give two examples, the guy who's called, quite literally, Mamdani's Sherpa, his guide, is a guy named Patrick Gaspard. Patrick Gaspard, his two major positions before Sherpa-ing Mamdani was the head of the Open Society Foundations. This is George Soros. And the head of the center, or a senior advisor at the Center for American Progress, which was created by Clinton advisors in 2003 and is probably the dominant Democratic think tank in Washington, D.C. These are the guys who Mamdani brought in after he won the primary. Meantime, his main campaign strategist is a guy named Morris Katz, who's a Jewish Zionist, anti-Netanyahu, but still a Jewish Zionist, from New York City, father very influential. One of Katz's first contacts was close to Andrew Cuomo in politics. He's very tied into this world. And so if you look at Soros, the Center for American Progress, these people don't like labor unions. They don't like class warfare. They don't like speaking for the working class. They're sort of against war, but they're not really against war. In other words, Soros opposed different interventions abroad. But once the interventions are over, you can always find the Open Societies Foundation going into these closed societies and setting up nonprofits. So he may say he's against these wars, but he's profiting from these wars. He made his bundle that allowed him to be a philanthropist in the financial markets as a hedge funder. And that depends on free trade and running down the working class and labor. So what you're seeing is that to gain, Tucker, Massey, MTG have stayed true to themselves thus far, but they have no power except in the culture. Mamdani has gotten power, but to do that, he's had to ally with this group of people. And this group of people, They don't like labor. They don't care about labor. They don't care about ending wars. And the way you can tell is that Mamdani is the mayor of New York. As you say, it's nice that he's pro-Palestinian, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is housing policy. That's the most important thing almost ever in a city. And right now, when housing is so short across the United States and prices are rising, it's especially important. And if you look at what he's done, he's bought into the Open Society, Center for American Progress, neoliberal, progressive, notion of how to fix housing, which is to get corporations involved, to build cheap housing, cut out regulations, cut out labor unions. Mamdani isn't going fully ahead with that, but he's doing it in a fairly decent clip. So on the most important thing that you can do as mayor, he's more or less selling out to those other portions of the Democratic Party. So as a summary, what I'd say is that the new left is talking a good game, and they have some priorities that are like the right that we like, the Carlson, Massey, Green right. But in reality, the price for gaining power is getting into bed with a lot of people who are actively diluting their priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, new left, same tricks, as I've titled this piece. You mentioned already a little bit the Open Society and kind of some of the the strings essentially on like the Platners, the Mamdanis. I don't think he explicitly said it, but I believe, if I recall correctly, that Katz character you mentioned earlier, who was working with Mamdani, also was working with Platner. I didn't realize that was there, so that's interesting. Not that it really means that much, but I mean, I guess it's something. So it's a data point worth remembering.
What is an oyster man from Maine?
Yeah.
Who was an ex-military guy being Sherpa'd by the son of a Tribeca film director who, is a Jewish Zionist in New York. I mean, it's a weird thing.
Yeah. I mean, I it's hard for me to trust Platner too much. He is, I do got to put it out. It does, raise my eyebrows at the very least. Somebody who is a prior operator, and not only that, he went to work as a private contractor as an operator, and then now here he is as a political operator. I don't know. My spidey senses prick up, but he could just be a good old boy. Everything, all the vibes are good old boy, and I do enjoy his antics at the very least.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah, but it's noteworthy. He shares the same political counsel, I guess you could say, as Mamdani. But kind of into the idea of same tricks. As I was reading through your piece, I was seeing some of the string pullers. They're the same sort of people that were behind the Clinton administration, and behind Obama, which kind of new left, same tricks. It's like, is that not the same thing? I mean, not that I really recall there being too strong of like a woke sort of thing in the left, but you definitely had more hip lefties. Hell, even Obama, while he did like kind of lead to the woke thing, he still somehow in a weird way sort of preceded it, yet so still somehow managed to kind of come off as cool, if that makes sense. Because he did, he wasn't like he didn't actually have to sit in the effects of what he created. He was there before it, so he kind of got to set the frame as opposed to being put inside of it.
That's really well put.
Yeah, but like a Bill Clinton, though, he was the hip guy playing sax, you kind of charming all the ladies' panties off, like just the coolest guy ever. And like, so it kind of very much like a Newsom sort of character. So we did have kind of similar sort of things. They also, especially with Obama, more so Obama than Clinton, they were, supposed to be, warriors of the downtrodden. And we kind of see how that ended up working out. And now we're seeing the same thing play out over again with a different group of individuals. So, I mean, I guess obviously just kind of your thoughts on that dynamic a little bit. And I guess we could probably even get into some of those people, because I was kind of astounded. I did not realize that, by the way, as I was digging through this piece, that Leon Panetta had a son that was in politics. I found that out. I was like, oh, shit. But go on. Anyways, your thoughts.
So does another guy. There's a guy named Ira Magaziner who was Hillary Clinton's main advisor on her disastrous healthcare policy in the 90s. That was basically going to centralize American medical care under a bunch of experts behind closed doors. It was so anathema that it failed in a Democratic Congress. Her main guy was a Jewish Zionist named Ira Magaziner. And he was a consultant, and she brought him in, a former lefty turned consultant. And now his son, Seth Magaziner, is in Congress, cutting his own way. And his one of his biggest donors is AIPAC. And so, these things just repeat themselves in a lot of ways. And Panetta, who before he was CIA director, was chief of staff for Bill Clinton. I mean, all of these people.
SecDef too, I think.
He was SecDef for Obama, and he was CIA director for Obama. But he came up under Clinton in Clinton's White House as chief of staff. And with Panetta, with Rahm Emanuel, with Andrew Cuomo, who keeps resurfacing, urging Mamdani to do these pro-development, pro-corporate policies, you see that the Democratic Party really hasn't changed, with the Center for American Progress, which was set up by John Podesta from the Clinton White House. You see that nothing has really changed down to personnel in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party, this is, if I were to emphasize one thing, because remember, I lived in these circles, Democratic centrist circles and left circles between my time in academia and my time in New York writing for Zionists. I lived in these sort of left and center circles on the Democratic Party. And the one thing I would tell people on the right that I don't think is mentioned on the right is that the weird cultural stuff is not left. The weird cultural stuff you see is not left. It is progressive and it is neoliberal. It's nobody, like, if you listen to Bernie Sanders, and I quote him here, he basically says, I want gay people to be able to marry, but my main concern is, are you on the side of the wealthy or are you on the side of the many, less wealthy? The left really cares about distribution of power, of economic power. And they always have. If you go back to Marx, he was a class warrior. That's what he did. He cared about, it was capital, right? Progressivism is this very weird thing that developed basically starting with Clinton. And it developed because people like Clinton and Magaziner and Panetta, they saw that the Democratic Party was losing. The old unions, the old black voters, the older, identity, the older ethnic groups, from their point of view, it wasn't enough to beat the Reagans, to beat the Bushes. And so the Democrats said, we're going to court finance. We're going to follow the Republicans' playbook and court finance in the 80s and 90s. Well, basically what they did quietly is completely remade the Democratic Party's base. 50 years ago, the Democratic Party's base was the poor and working class. Today, its base are people who work for Goldman Sachs and Google. And if you're somebody like Clinton or Obama, how do you make that shift while not saying you're making that shift? How do you keep your old groups, your working class, your poor people, while getting all these wealthy people? Well, what they did is they changed the definition of oppressed. For a long time in this country, oppressed wasn't some buzzword. It meant something really basic. Do you have rights as a factory worker, or can they work you for 16 hours until you drop dead of a heart attack? Can you vote in the South as a black person? These were really basic things. Starting in the 80s and 90s, they started changing what oppressed meant to appeal to a bunch of upper middle income workers at corporate structures. Goldman Sachs, those kind of places. And what they started saying is it's about your identity. If you're gay, if you're a woman, if you're black, if you're a Latinx, that's what matters. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. What matters is your race. What matters is your gender. What matters is your sexuality. And of course, if you think about this practically, there's an obvious attraction if you're a politico trying to keep your old base while also getting rich people behind you. And the benefit is you get to say, oh, yes, Black community, I'm still on your side, without actually, yes, poor working single mother, I'm still on your side. Now I'm going to cut your benefits. I'm going to cut your welfare. I'm going to cut your labor unions. I'm going to make your life harder economically. But I'm going to talk really loudly about women's rights and Black people's rights. Basically, what they managed to do is start appealing to this upper middle class, yuppified, diverse workforce in places like New York and San Francisco, but then keep the old groups by saying, oh, we still believe in, you're Black too. You're not so different, you working mom with 5 kids on food stamps. You're not so different than this Black woman in a corporation who makes $200,000 a year. And that's what progressivism is. Progressivism is class doesn't matter, economics doesn't matter, only your identity, your personal identity, your color, your religion, your race, your gender, your sexuality matters. And using that, Democrats like Clinton using that, has allowed them to do exactly what Republicans like Bush and now Trump have done, which is, hey, Christians, hey, white rural Christians, I may be outsourcing your labor, I may be decimating your jobs, but I believe in Christianity, so you should be on my side. It's all about identity at the expense of politics or economics or power. And that's been the core of both parties' transitions. Today, we're talking about the Democrats. And that's why you can see people like Newsom, who puts such a premium on how he thinks about LGBTQ and woke. That's why you can see, somebody like Mamdani, who really wants to talk about economic issues, still plays the race card. Race, religion, identity has become the way both parties try to ally differences between working class and middle class, working class and upper class, people who have no power and people who can get on the phone to their congressman because they're a big donor. So if I were to tell anybody anything about this, and this is a legacy of the Clinton years, continuing with Obama, I say in the piece, as you say, Obama floated above the identity fray, but quietly, before his second election, he passed all these measures related to dreamers, immigrants, related to women, related to gay marriage, that were supposed to bring out the identity bases, appeal to those Goldman Sachs workers. But he did it quietly, So the core of the Democrats' trick and the rule everybody has to play by, if you're a Republican, you have to say, I pledge allegiance and I believe in God. If you're a Democrat, you have to say, I believe in LGBTQ and multiculturalism. And by talking about that, the Obama, Clinton, all of these people, and Clinton, he did look like a cool sax playing Southerner, but behind the scenes, he set the stage with affirmative action. With stuff that Hillary Clinton did, he set the stage for a lot of what Obama did. And then the LGBTQ plus people really put into hyperdrive. The one other thing I'd say, I'm thinking of a good example. The biggest organization for LGBTQ plus rights in the country is something called the Human Rights Campaign. And the Human Rights Campaign's big funders are Goldman Sachs and Northrop Grumman and all of these big military contractors. And the Human Rights Campaign is also responsible for, it has all these financial military corporate backers. It's responsible for some of the most draconian pro-trans legislation that really got a backlash. And it owes its foundation to connections with Bill Clinton and Hollywood in the 1990s. That's when it really got started. And if anything sort of shows to me what these what the Democrats' plan has been for 35 years. And what people like Mamdani, even if they don't want to, are buying into to get elected is identity matters, political economy doesn't matter. As long as you're pro-gay rights, it doesn't matter if you're funding wars and drone strikes and too big to fail companies like Goldman Sachs. That's the way they keep their coalition together.
Yeah, I think you laid it out in the piece, I thought, pretty well, where I believe you kind of classified this, I guess you could almost say this certain methodology, it seems, from the left as a universalism. And funny enough, I like to bring up Democracy, the God That Fails quite frequently, and it reminds me of reading that book, and this is the sort of language that it uses to spell out the errors of democracy. But then you see it flouted about in this sort of dignified sort of way by intellectuals, the elites among us, and it kind of gives it a little bit more of a lofty feel about it. This is, we have this voting block over here and this voting block, and I've heard this argument and I've heard that argument, and we came together and there was compromise and we had the democratic process and all these sanitizing sort of terms that, if you really did, look at just even a centimeter deeper, you realize like, these are not good things that you're describing. But either way, this seems to be the methodology going forward, and they already seem to have their foot soldiers in place. I mean, we mentioned the Gavin Newsoms, which is obviously like a foot soldier of that. This was an example I gave of one who's clearly more contrived, trying to lean into this new vibe. And this is their way that they can kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they can kind of lean into identity politics without being like beholden to it, I guess you could say, since it's now about debates between minorities as opposed to a specific minority or something like that. And this is how you can look somebody in the face and do something that, flies in the face of everything you say because we had an argument about it. But either way, just kind of we have all these people. You have the people who are more like the foot soldiers who can kind of, if for those who aren't paying attention, maybe sort of, if your vision's a little blurry, kind of fill the role of like a Mamdani or a Platner. But these are the people like the Richie Torres. For example, Jimmy Panetta that we mentioned earlier, that was the son of Leon Panetta. You got Liza Slotkin. You got Jared Golden over in Maine. But there's a plenty of them out there that are kind of essentially using this new tact, and they're very clearly creatures of the establishment. But given the language they use, this is a very sort of language that'll also be effective on a Platner, on a Mamdani. It's also the same sort of language that they themselves will almost certainly use. I would put money on it. They almost certainly probably already have used this sort of language numerous times. So I can see this as being the way that this blunts any sort of radical change. So any thoughts on that? It seemed to prick your ears up.
I think you put your finger dead on. And thank you, because when you talk about Obama seeming to float above the identity politics he's practicing, he did. And the reason he did is he talked in terms of these universals, hope and change, etc. Clinton talked in terms of reasonable people coming together to make pragmatic decisions, even as he played identity politics. And what we're seeing now is Mamdani is doing the same thing. I mean, he's getting criticized from the left, from some genuine Seattle like union organizers. If you're genuinely on the left, like neoliberals are about corporations, progressives are about identity. The left is about fucking class, okay? It's about class. The left has always been about class. Class is Marx's big insight, or one of his big insights. If you're on the left properly, you should be talking about class. Billionaires are taking from working people. Billionaires are fucking over labor unions. Capital has gotten its entrails into government, and government is fucking over the small working man, right? Picket lines for 8-hour work weeks. Picket lines for minimum wage. Get the Starbucks baristas out. Get private sector unions back. Break up the big banks. I mean, that's the language of the left. Mamdani uses it some. I mean, there's been some controversies recently where he uses it. But the default language that he uses, if you read his speeches, is this universalism. We're all together. We're all building a better world. You and I want peace. You and I want love. He talks about love a lot. Graham Platner talks about love a lot. That isn't, first of all, it's not properly democratic. I mean, proper democracy is majoritarian government with checks. I mean, constitutional democracy means you go out and you organize and you advocate and you get your way if there are more people, but there are some rules in place so that you can't kill minorities. I mean, that's what this is not democracy. This is institutional talk about all of us are individuals and we all are similar and we're diverse and we all come together, yet we're all different. It's not really practical politics, but it's a really good way, because if you say, oh, we're all reasonable people, oh, we all believe in love, oh, we all believe in dignity and humanity, you're not talking about the irreconcilable interests that politics turns on. And to me, if you combine some of Mamdani's policies with his reliance on that language, that's the price for it. He has to talk like George Soros. George Soros likes talking about individuals not bound by class or religion or race or location, because George Soros made his money off a world where there were free markets, free exchange of goods, which meant corporations could do whatever they wanted, right? Big corporations attached to government could do whatever they wanted. It was an insider monopolist, crony capitalist, too big to fail game. Mamdani, to get in the room, has to talk in those terms. Universalism, as Obama did it, as Clinton did it, he called it pragmatism, as Mamdani does it, it serves the same project as identity politics, as progressivism, which is we don't actually have to talk about the real interests at play. We just get to feel good,
Yeah, feel good with even less action. At least with identity politics, it was more pointed. Whereas now it's even further, where it's like, yes, you are correct. That is a bad problem. But we argued about it, and we decided that this is a compromise we will come to. And it's like, okay, thanks. That seems to be, I don't know. I mean, I guess I prefer this as an ineffective identity politics, but it does seem to be hypocritical. While I think identity politics was wrong and retarded, at least this is like, it's hard to find any sort of principled take here. This is the, lofty, just bromides that mean really a whole bunch of nothing, that I really think anyone above a room temperature IQ can kind of see through them and realize, oh, these are just, bumper sticker sayings that people are saying over and over again. But unfortunately, there seems to be a large population of people who fall for these sort of tricks. But with that, I think we've had a good conversation on the upcoming left and how they're practicing the same tricks. If you have any other final thoughts, anything else that you felt like we should have honed in on, or just any sort of conclusive something or other for this, feel free to chime in. But other than that, Matt, where can people find your work at?
Yeah, I think the one thing, because I think you make a really strong point. I mean, you can find my work at oppo-research.com and go on X. I just wanted to hit this language of universalism. Like, this takes too long to go into. It's really old. It's like 100 years old. The WASP started it, and their sort of Jewish counterparts in the institutions did it as well. You can trace it back 100 years to like Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt. And it's only gotten more and more common since. And it's like this odorless gas that just leaks in around us and frames a lot of how we talk. And as you say, it doesn't mean anything, but it's a really powerful sort of way of thinking about things. And elites, not Democrats, but elites have used it for a long time. So I think, I have a feeling, it'll come up again. I think it's just worth saying. It sounds stupid. It's way more effective than you'd think it might be, given how stupid it sounds.
Yeah, no, it does work. As you finished off your piece, in essence, this ends up becoming military corporatism with a universalist, humanitarian, and progressive face. And I think that's a good way to put it. And this sort of weasel language is what enables it big time. So, tale as old as time. And this is just political language. They've been doing it for forever. You're finding different ways to finagle it, different angles. Finding ways to kind of back off the pie in their face of the woke era while still somehow maintaining some semblance of, non-hypocrisy, and that like, oh, we still are concerned about minorities, but we're going about it in this different way. In this, we got to be concerned about other minorities out there, and they have to get their say in the democratic process. And once we got all the different cacophony of voices together, this is what we come up with. But either way, I really enjoyed this piece this week, Matt, and pleasure to have you on again. I look forward to next week's piece, whatever that may end up being. For those who want to support what I'm doing, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can find the show on YouTube, Rumble, all the major audio podcatchers, and Twitter as well. On Twitter, that's at TowerGangJose. Everywhere else, this is the No Way Jose podcast. If you want to support the show the best way you can, you do with money over at patreon.com. So there's No Way Jose 2020. In the top left-hand corner, you can see a QR code that gives you access. It takes you to the same exact place as the URL I gave you. But at the low level, $2 give you a whole host of perks, give you access to early episodes. I try to do about 1 to 2 of those per week. This is one of them right here. So you would have got it earlier if you were a patron. And I also give you guys access to an ad-free RSS feed, give you access to Telegram, to the pre-show, post-show, and video calls to me and Austin's weekly live call-in show. Also give a big shout out to the highest level of my Patreon. Is a big thank you for their support. I'm my previous ghost and Tower Gang at Leonard Toad, also at Brigade D's, at ZVersiK, at _Zeal, Tim Till, at John Klebo, big fan of the show Torme, at Wayne Tackles, Winter Guard for Kids, No Free Lunch, Jack, Mark Vestibule, Jacob Wintergard of Biblical Energy Podcast, and Jacob Black, that beautiful bastard. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Love you all. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.